What happens when a silver spoon meets an iron will? In an era where a single viral moment can erase decades of corporate legacy, one billionaire family learned that privilege is no shield against accountability, and that lesson cost them $650 million. Check out these statistics. In 2024, 73% of Fortune 500 companies reported losing major deals due to executive behavior captured on social media. But none lost as spectacularly as the Rothwell empire. The crystal chandelier above the Rothwell Grand Ballroom cast diamonds of light across a sea of tuxedos and evening gowns. But in exactly 47 seconds, $650 million would evaporate in a cascade of red wine and shattered privilege. Before we dive into what happens next, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because this story is going to shake you, no matter what country you're in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Marcus Rothwell III stood near the bar, his third glass of champagne making everything feel pleasantly hazy. At 28, he'd never questioned his place in the world. Why would he? His last name opened every door, silenced every complaint, and made problems disappear like magic. The $4.2 billion family empire wasn't just his inheritance, it was his identity. "Another bottle," he called out, snapping his fingers toward a figure in an elegant gown near the bar. "And make it quick, sweetheart." The woman turned. Her skin was the color of warm mahogany, her natural hair styled in an intricate updo that had taken 2 hours to perfect. The custom Prada gown she wore cost more than most people's cars. Her eyes, intelligent, assessing, locked onto Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I'm not serving tonight," she said, her voice carrying a quiet authority that should have warned him. But Marcus Rothwell III had never learned to read warnings. He'd never had to. His prep school friends snickered behind him, their laughter fueling his performance. This was who he was in their world, the bold one, the one who didn't give a damn, the one who made things happen. He grabbed a bottle of 1982 Chateau Bordeaux from the nearest table. $2,000 per bottle. Pocket change. "Let me show you how we treat people who don't know their place," he announced, loud enough for his audience to hear. Then he tilted the bottle. The wine poured in slow motion, or maybe that was just how everyone would remember it later, when the video replayed millions of times across every screen in the world. Dark red liquid cascaded over the woman's shoulder, soaking into the Prada gown, dripping down her arms, pooling on the imported Italian marble at her feet. 300 people gasped in unison. Phones emerged from pockets like a coordinated flash mob. The clicking of camera shutters sounded like a swarm of mechanical insects, and across the VIP section, Richard and Victoria Rothwell, Marcus's parents, the king and queen of this hospitality empire, watched their son humiliate a stranger. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed, a tinkling sound behind her champagne flute. "Boys will be boys," she murmured to her husband, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "At least he's showing some backbone." Richard's mustache twitched in what might have been amusement. Their son, asserting dominance. How positively Rothwell of him. But something was wrong. The room had gone too quiet. The kind of quiet that precedes explosions. Marcus, emboldened by his parents' approval, pulled out his wallet. He extracted a $100 bill with theatrical slowness and tossed it at the wine-soaked woman's feet. "Send me the dry cleaning bill." He smirked. "Oh, wait, that should cover it." The woman stood perfectly still, wine dripping from her hair, but her eyes... God, her eyes burned with something that made Marcus's grin falter. She smiled. It was the smile of a predator who just watched prey walk into a trap. "Mr. Rothwell?" she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Do you know who I am?" And in that moment, Marcus saw his father's face drain of color, saw his mother's hand tremble, saw the horror dawn in their eyes. "You're..." Marcus whispered. alcohol fog clearing with terrible, terrible speed. Simone Baptiste, she finished, CEO of Baptiste Technologies, the woman whose signature you need on a $650 million contract. She stepped closer, heels clicking on wine-stained marble. The woman who was about to save your failing empire. Was. Past tense. What happens next will shock you, and make sure you find out. 18 minutes after the wine incident, Winegate exploded across every social media platform simultaneously. The video had already hit 5 million views. By midnight, it would reach 50 million. But Marcus Rothwell III wasn't watching social media. He was watching his father's hand shake as Richard tried and failed for the 17th time to call Simone Baptiste, straight to voicemail, every single time. She'll answer, Victoria insisted, though her voice had lost its earlier confidence. She has to. The contract is worth hundreds of millions to her company, too. Mother, Marcus said quietly, I don't think she cares. He was right. At that exact moment, Simone sat in an emergency board meeting at Baptiste Technologies' Brooklyn headquarters. Her senior team surrounded her, laptops open, financial projections glowing on screens. The Rothwell deal represents 23% of our projected Q4 revenue, her CFO stated flatly. Our investors are going to lose their minds if we walk away. Let them, Simone said. She'd changed clothes but hadn't bothered to wash the wine from her hair. She wanted to remember how it felt. Wanted that feeling to fuel what came next. Pull the contract. Immediately. Her head of operations leaned forward. Simone, I understand you're angry. Angry? Simone's laugh was sharp. I'm calculating. That boy didn't spill wine on me by accident. He poured it, deliberately, in front of 300 people, because he thought I was beneath him. His parents laughed. Do you understand what that means? The room went silent. It means the rot goes all the way to the top, she continued. This isn't about one drunk heir. This is about a company culture that breeds entitlement and protects abusers. And I won't attach my name, or our name, to that poison. Drop a like if you're Team Simone right now, because what she does next is absolutely savage. While Simone burned bridges with surgical precision, journalists were lighting fires of their own. By 2 a.m., they'd uncovered the real story. Marcus had done this before. Multiple times. A hotel maid in the Maldives, sexually harassed, paid off, and silenced with an NDA. In a DUI accident in Monaco, covered up by family lawyers, the victim was compensated into silence. Staff complaints spanning 5 years all disappeared into the void of Rothwell's legal protection. The pattern was undeniable. Marcus wasn't having a bad night. He was being himself. But it got worse. Rothwell Industries board composition, 12 members. All white, all male, average age 63. Their diversity initiatives existed only on paper, beautiful brochures with stock photos of smiling minorities who didn't actually work there. 23 discrimination lawsuits over 15 years, all settled quietly, all buried under legal concrete. The company Marcus's great-grandfather built on traditional values had a tradition, all right. Protecting powerful men from consequences. By morning, Rothwell Industries' stock had plummeted 23%. Hotel bookings dropped 40%. GAC boycott Rothwell trended in 17 countries. Major investors demanded emergency meetings. Credit agencies whispered about downgrades. And Simone Baptiste? Her stock rose. Offers flooded in from competitors, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, all desperate for her technology, all suddenly very interested in demonstrating their commitment to diverse partnerships. 1 week after the incident, Simone agreed to one meeting with the Rothwell family. Not at their Manhattan tower. At her office. In Brooklyn. Where she'd grown up in a one-bedroom apartment with parents who worked 3 jobs between them. The reversal of power was exquisite. Marcus sat across from her, rehearsed apology dying on his lips when he saw her expression. His parents flanked him like anxious guards. The family that had laughed 7 days ago now looked like defendants awaiting sentencing. "I'm sorry if—" Marcus began. "Stop." Simone's voice was surgical. "I don't want your if apology. Answer one question truthfully. Did you pour that wine on me because you thought I was staff? Or because you wanted to humiliate a black woman in front of your friends?" The silence stretched like pulled taffy. Marcus had no answer. Or rather, he had no answer he could say aloud. Simone slid a folder across the table. "These are my terms. Non-negotiable. Sign by Friday or watch your empire crumble. What's inside that folder will blow your mind." Friday, 2:47 p.m., 13 minutes until the deadline. The Rothwell Industries boardroom felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Marcus stared at the contract in front of him, his father's desperate eyes boring into his skull from across the mahogany table. Simone's terms were brutal. $10 million donated to diversity initiatives, complete board restructuring to include minorities and women, mandatory company-wide anti-discrimination training, independent oversight committee with power to investigate complaints. Marcus removed from all operational roles for 1 year. Personal donation from Marcus, $5 million to organizations supporting women and minorities in business. "This is extortion," Marcus had said when he first read it. "She's trying to destroy everything we've built." But now, with 12 minutes left, staring at the financial projections his CFO had just presented, Marcus understood the truth. They were already destroyed. The question was whether they'd rebuild or disappear. "If we don't sign," the CFO said quietly, "2 major investors pull out Monday morning. Our credit line collapses. We'll be fighting bankruptcy by Q2. Victoria Rothwell, who'd laughed at her son's cruelty 7 days ago, now sat white-faced and trembling. "There has to be another way, another tech partner." "There isn't," Richard interrupted. His voice carried the weight of a man watching his legacy disintegrate. "I've called everyone. They all know what happened. Nobody wants to touch us. Baptiste is offering us a lifeline we don't deserve." "Then we refuse it," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We find another path. There is no other path." Richard slammed his fist on the table. "You did this, Marcus. Your arrogance, your entitlement, your absolute certainty that consequences don't apply to you, you brought us to this moment. So you get to decide, do we evolve or do we die? Comment below. What would you do if you were Marcus right now?" The clock on the wall ticked to 2:55 p.m. 5 minutes. Marcus thought about his great-grandfather, who'd built the first Rothwell Hotel with his bare hands. He thought about the century of legacy resting on his shoulders. He thought about the empire he'd always assumed would be his. Then he thought about Simone, standing in wine-soaked Prada with murder in her eyes and dignity in her spine. The woman who'd built an empire from nothing, while he'd inherited everything and learned nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from his college roommate. "Dude, you're a meme. Privilege Exposed has 89 million views. You're the poster boy for everything wrong with rich people. How does it feel?" How did it feel? Like drowning, like the ground disappearing beneath his feet. Like every assumption he'd built his identity on was made of paper. Marcus picked up the pen. "Wait," Victoria gasped. "Marcus, this will humiliate us." "We humiliated ourselves," Marcus said quietly. He looked at his mother, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd never faced a consequence in her life. Someone who'd taught him, by example, that people like them didn't need to care about people like anyone else. "I'm sorry, Mom, but Dad's right. We evolve, or we die." He signed on line 1. Richard, hands shaking, signed on line 2. Victoria, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face, signed last. At exactly 2:59 p.m., Marcus photographed the signed contract and texted it to Simone. At 3:00 p.m., her response came. Received. The deal proceeds. Your real work begins Monday. Marcus set down his phone and looked around the boardroom, at the portraits of Rothwell men spanning generations, all of them white, all of them certain of their place in the world. That certainty, he realized, was the real poison, and he'd just taken the antidote. What happens next will change everything. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the conclusion. 6 months can feel like 6 lifetimes when you're rebuilding yourself from the ground up. Marcus Rothwell III, no longer 3. He'd dropped that pretentious suffix, stood in a community center in the Bronx, listening to a single mother describe how her manager groped her at work and threatened to fire her if she complained. The old Marcus would have looked at his watch, would have mentally calculated his exit, would have seen her as a problem, not a person. The new Marcus? He took notes. He listened. He believed her. We're going to help you, he said quietly. And we're going to make sure your manager faces consequences. This was his life now. Director of Corporate Responsibility at Rothwell Industries, a position that didn't exist 6 months ago, that came with no corner office and no executive perks. Just a desk, a mission, and a chance at redemption he absolutely didn't deserve. Drop a comment. Do you believe people like Marcus can actually change, or is this all for show? The transformation of Rothwell Industries happened faster than anyone expected. Simone's contract wasn't just words on paper. It was a revolution with legal teeth. The board restructured. 4 white men resigned, some gracefully, others threatening lawsuits. In their place, 2 black women, 1 Latina tech executive, and an Asian American hospitality expert. The average age dropped to 47. Fresh perspectives flooded meetings that had been stagnant for decades. The mandatory company-wide training? Brutal. Executives who'd spent careers dismissing complaints had to sit through 8-hour sessions on implicit bias, power dynamics, and accountability. Some quit rather than face it. Good riddance. But the real shock came from the Independent Oversight Committee. Within 3 months, they'd uncovered 17 ongoing harassment cases that had been managed by HR, which meant silenced, buried, and paid off. Every single case was reopened, every single victim was contacted, every single perpetrator faced consequences, including 3 senior executives who were fired despite their decades of service. Richard Rothwell, watching his old guard crumble, told Marcus one night over whiskey, "I thought this would destroy us. Instead, it's saving us." He was right. By month 4, employee satisfaction scores had doubled. Staff retention hit record highs. Word spread that Rothwell Industries was actually safe to work for now. Applications flooded in from talent that had previously avoided them. And the partnership with Baptiste Technologies? It exceeded every projection. Simone's quantum encryption platform integrated seamlessly with Rothwell's operations. Hotel systems that had hemorrhaged money through inefficiency now ran like precision instruments. Customer data became secure. Booking platforms became intuitive. The modernization that should have taken years happened in months. Rothwell's stock didn't just recover, it soared. Investors who'd threatened to flee became their biggest champions. Finally, one wrote in a shareholder letter, a legacy company that understands the future. But the most powerful transformation was the quietest one. Victoria Rothwell, who'd laughed at her son's cruelty, volunteered to lead the company's new mentorship program for women in hospitality. She met with young professionals, many of them women of color, and listened to their experiences with a humility that shocked everyone who knew her. "I spent 60 years believing my comfort mattered more than other people's dignity," she told Marcus one afternoon. "Your mistake forced me to see mine." One evening, 9 months after the wine incident, Marcus received an unexpected email from Simone. There's a gala next month. Baptiste Technologies is receiving an innovation award. Your family is invited. If you choose to attend, I have a question to ask you in person. Marcus stared at that last sentence for 20 minutes. What question? Why in person? Was this a test? An olive branch? A trap? He had 3 weeks to wonder. What do you think Simone wants to ask Marcus? Comment your theories below. The gala was in the same ballroom, the same crystal chandelier, the same imported marble floors where wine had once pooled like blood. Marcus arrived early, palms sweating despite the November chill. He'd debated bringing his parents, but this felt like something he needed to face alone. Simone found him near the bar, of course. The bar, examining the bottles as they might explode. She wore midnight blue tonight, her natural hair styled in elegant locks. She looked powerful, untouchable, victorious. "Mr. Rothwell," she said. Not Marcus. Still formal, still maintaining that distance. Ms. Baptiste. He'd learned to match her professionalism. "Congratulations on your award." "Thank you." She studied him with those sharp eyes. "You look different." "I am different." He meant it. The past 9 months had stripped away layers of entitlement he hadn't known he was wearing. "You asked if I'd changed. I think I'm still changing. Every day." Simone nodded slowly. "I've been watching. The Oversight Committee's work, the harassment cases you personally followed up on, the scholarship fund." She paused. "The TED Talk where you showed the video of yourself pouring wine on me and broke down every toxic thought that led to that moment." Marcus flinched. That talk had been the hardest thing he'd ever done, publicly dissecting his own privilege, his own cruelty. 3 million views and counting. Half the comments praised his honesty, half called him a performative fraud. "Was it genuine?" Simone asked. "Or calculated PR?" "Both," Marcus admitted. "It started as damage control, but halfway through writing it, I realized I actually believed what I was saying. The performance became real." "Good answer." Simone's expression softened microscopically. "Which brings me to my question." She gestured to a quiet corner. They sat. "Baptiste Technologies is launching a new initiative," Simone began. "A leadership program for young executives from underrepresented backgrounds. We're partnering with major corporations to provide mentorship, resources, and real pathways to power." She leaned forward. "I want Rothwell Industries to be our flagship partner. And I want you to co-lead the program with me." Marcus's brain short-circuited. "You want me? Why?" "Because you're a case study in transformation. Because people like you, wealthy, privileged, raised in systems that taught you nothing about accountability, they need to see that change is possible. Not easy, not comfortable, but possible." She held his gaze. "And because if I can work with you after what you did, maybe others can believe in second chances too." Let me know in the comments. Would you give Marcus a second chance? Marcus felt something crack in his chest. Not breaking. Opening. "I don't deserve this opportunity." "No," Simone agreed. "You don't. But that's not the point. The point is what you do with it. Privilege isn't just about having money. It's about believing you're entitled to treat others as less than human. And the most expensive lesson anyone can learn is this: respect costs nothing, but disrespect can cost everything. Marcus Rothwell thought his last name was armor. He learned it was a target. He thought power meant dominance. He learned it means responsibility. He thought accountability was punishment. He learned it was liberation. 1 bottle of wine, $650 million. And a choice: remain entitled or become worthy. The question isn't whether Marcus deserves forgiveness. The question is whether he'll spend the rest of his life earning it. This one is for my viewers. How many times have you witnessed someone abuse their power and face zero consequences? How many Marcuses exist in your workplace, your industry, your life, people who've never learned that their actions matter? Change doesn't happen because powerful people suddenly develop morals. It happens because people like Simone refuse to accept disrespect, even when it costs them millions. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about power, accountability, and the real cost of entitlement. Because the next viral video could be about someone you know, or someone you are. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and drop a comment telling me, what would you have done in Simone's position? Because this story isn't just about a billionaire's son who learned to be better. It's about all of us deciding what behavior we'll tolerate and what lines we'll defend. The choice is yours. Now make it count.